Looks like pretty much everyone. Okay, great. Terrific. Welcome, everyone. I'm Hillary Hedges-Rayport, and I am calling to order the meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission. Thank you all for being here. We are meeting via Zoom conference call per Governor Baker's adjustment to open meeting law, allowing us to convene remotely because of COVID. So I'm going to call everyone's name. Just let me know that you can hear me. Commissioners: Tom Montgomery.
Present.
Susan Handy.
Present.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
David Silver.
Present.
Angus McLeod.
Here.
Georgia Raisman.
Here.
Thank you. And our staff liaison, preservation planner, Holly Bacchus.
Present.
Thank you. We have our liaison to the select board, Dawn Hill-Holgate.
Here.
And it looks like we have a few guests. We have Kevin Kuster.
Here.
And I also see we have Mary Bergman and Ken Bookbrand with us today. Welcome.
Good morning.
Great. So I just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded. So anything you say will be recorded, and just take care not to share your screen. I actually don't think you can share your screen without permission, but be careful that anything would be captured by the recording. And also, just to keep order in the meeting, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and speak through the chair. So, and please speak in a way that we can collect. So I'm now going to turn to the first item on the agenda. The first is approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any requests or comments regarding the minutes? Any discussion about the minutes?
I approve. I move that
hearing
we
none.
approve the minutes.
Thank you, Tom. Could I have a second?
Second.
That motion. Thank you, Georgia. All in favor? Mickey?
Yes.
Mickey?
Yes.
Okay, great. Susan?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Thank you. And Tom and Georgia, I assume you're in favor of your motions?
Yes.
And I am also an aye. Thank you. So we'll post those minutes. I also wanted to confirm the future meeting dates. They're on the second page of the agenda. So we will continue meeting at 10 a.m. on Fridays via Zoom, unless there's an ability to meet in person. Does anybody have any known conflicts with any of these meeting dates? We can change these meeting dates. We just like to get them, out there. Any comments? Okay. Yes, Holly.
I just wanted to mention, if you all approve these dates, I will run them by town administration. Erica needs to bless them, so that way we can make sure we have this Zoom account. I will say that Fridays seem to be clear, so that's good.
Okay, great. So we're generally meeting the third Friday of the month at 10 a.m. If there's any disruption to that schedule, I'll let you know. And of course, we always can add additional meetings if we have a need to meet. For any reason, we can convene a meeting. We'll just make that happen. Okay, I am going to ask if we can make some changes to the agenda, just because to accommodate a visitor guest speaker that we have. I would like to move the evaluation of ATM Article 82 up until now. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, great. And I am going to ask Angus to chair the meeting during this discussion, because I helped Kevin and I've spoken as a proponent of this article. So I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Angus.
So we'll just move to that. Does anyone want to speak on it, Kevin? Or
Sure. Thanks for having me on this morning and for moving it up. I don't know what anyone on this group knows about Article 82. It's pretty simple. It's kind of a housekeeping article, if you will. But Article 82 is to, oops, there we go. Article 82 is to ensure that contractors specify the smallest allowable signs on Nantucket. And it also will hopefully guard against what I call, excessive signage. And by excessive signage is those yellow diamond warning signs that we see telling you that there's going to be another warning sign ahead, or it's a yellow warning sign that tells you something that may or may not happen, such as deer who are notably known not to cross right where the sign is. Today, signs are being specified by a number of various departments and contractors. They tend to all end up at some point on our streets, and so they're therefore associated with the town, but different people are going to specify them based upon where they come from. Sometimes the DPW, sometimes the state and their contractors through work with the NPDC. And over time, we've seen, since people have turned over in those various positions and things change over time and we build more rotaries and have more roads, we have ended up with an assortment of various warning signs. So the goal with this, as I said, is to get us to be able to, recommend the smallest sign possible that fits within the state guidelines. It's not going to interfere with any school crossings or any pedestrian crossings or any hazardous areas. It's just to try to limit the number. And if there is an instance where we need to have a lot of warning signs and it doesn't quite fit with this, it goes to town meeting and we can decide as a community how many signs we want to have around this particular issue. The other thing that this will help is to minimize the use of the real bright day glow yellow that some of you have seen. That will still be allowed by school crossings and areas where the state has determined that color to be the most effective. But it's not a color that we need to use everywhere, and this way we can hopefully minimize some of that, which tends to impact the visual clutter that we have. So just to keep it brief, that's a basic brief overview. We presented this to the traffic safety work group. They were okay with it. They endorsed it. We presented this to FinCom. FinCom has motioned to take no action. It's pretty simple. I'm not sure why we got that, but we got that. Anyway, we'd appreciate getting an endorsement from the Historical Commission, as I think this will go a long way to just helping to keep our rural areas and our areas less cluttered. So if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. It appears to be a common sense article that is completely aligned with our goals and objectives. So it makes total sense. The rest of the board, is there anyone who has any questions or concerns about it? Tom?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns. It's just a comment. I mean, I think Kevin's 110% right with bringing this forward. And all you have to do, we already made recommendations to the town about the Sconset Road, and you can see what's happened there. And it's a perfect example of what Kevin's talking about. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to endorse this article. Oh, Ken.
Sorry, thank you. Just a question. Is there a funding source for this? And is there a definition of who's responsible for doing this and how it would get done?
Well, there is no there is no funding source, as this is a, how do I explain? This in the end should reduce funding because it should reduce the number of signs required. Certainly a smaller sign is going to cost less than a bigger sign, but I really don't see that there's a need for a funding source as this becomes a regulation that when people specify the signs, they're given more direction as to what they can specify. I'm sorry, Ken, what was that? I forgot the other question.
Sorry, Kevin, just the question of who's responsible for enforcement or monitoring if this in fact gets approved at the town meeting.
Good question. Ultimately, I think since this is a bylaw, it's going to fall under town administration to enforce the bylaws. I don't foresee that there's going to be a huge issue with things that aren't specified the right way. It's sort of, analogous to when we build things on Nantucket, we're given a guideline about how things need to be, certain measurements and so forth. Dormers need to be set back from the ridge and so forth. So it's more to assure that when people specify projects, that they specify the correct size that we prefer. So hopefully by getting the specifications in place early enough, it can be consistent. There will probably still be times when things come in that are either too big or the wrong color or whatever. And I would assume that if it's a major issue that DPW or whoever instructed it would just need to be told that it doesn't meet our specifications and to change it, much like we would do some architectural thing. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Ken.
Thank you, Kevin. Georgia?
My question is there any retroactivity? Can we get rid of all of those duplicative signs on the Sconset Road? That to some extent that relates to cost too. Somebody's got to go take them down, but they're so offensive.
Yes, they are offensive. The Milestone Road is a state road, as we all know. And when the state road was being specified, those signs and that work was being done through the MP and EDC, and therefore it went through the state. And at the time that was going in, the early historical commission was trying to look at that project, but it went full speed ahead with DPW and NP and EDC, and no input was sought for a reduction of size, number, or color. I don't know what the process is for removal other than, Midnight Cowboys, but I don't believe that this particular article can go back in and retroactively change things. This is, I guess, more of a safeguard to try to not have that behavior again in the future. It doesn't mean that they couldn't be reduced somehow, and maybe that's something I can do or help with, but at this point, this is meant mainly to put guidelines in place so we don't have to go through that again. We don't want to see that on Sparks Avenue. We don't want to see it on Orange Street. So if we get hopefully if we get some guidelines in place now, we can stop some of that before it happens.
I don't know if it was Midnight Cowboys, but somebody took away that scenic view sign up at the top of Milestone Road just before you head down to Sconset. And I don't know whether that was done, by a Midnight Cowboy or by the town. I think it was done by the town. So there is some capacity to remove those signs regardless of MassDOT.
Yes, I would agree. And, the same thing happened when the Rotary run in, at Sparks Avenue, the first Rotary. We had a zillion signs and everybody said, oh, they're going to go away and this will never happen again. So at this point, if we can stop it from never happening again, that's one check. And I'm all in favor of trying to, remove some of the ones that are out there. And part of it is that we as a community have not necessarily spoken loud enough, or in the right areas to try to get our arms around some of these, some of these things that frankly, a lot of people don't see the clutter until it's there. A lot of people don't realize the impact of all these little things have. So hopefully with this action and other things that your group is doing, we can clean some of it up.
Thank you, Kevin. I see this sign thing sort of like, the street signs. We don't have typical green, large street signs that for the actual streets. We have gray with a little border. And so, those are specifications, just as these would be for the different kinds of signs that we would have. So it seems to be in keeping with things that are already in place. If there are not any more questions or concerns, I'll go ahead and take a motion.
I'll motion to endorse the article.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom? Thank you. I'll just go through. Hillary? Oh, sorry, you can't. Tom?
Aye.
And Mickey?
Aye.
David, on your motion?
Yes, aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. It's unanimous. And I will turn the chair back over to Hillary.
Great, thank you very much, and see you at town meeting.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Good luck at town meeting, Kevin. Great. Thank you, Angus. That was so relaxing. I really actually enjoyed turning my camera off and just sitting here. Okay, so we're gonna move the announcements and the survey grant. Oh, actually, we could. Are we good? You know what? Let's get into the discussion of the tax credit, just because I would like Dawn to be able to be present during that period, and she might need to leave at 11. And we will go back and pick up the other items, the announcements and the survey grant discussion. So I'd like everybody to I'll go ahead and share my screen. Actually, I'm going to take a minute. I should have done this earlier, to switch to a better network and share the screen and ask Holly to orient us a little bit. Holly, do you want to talk a little bit about what's before us?
Yes, the historic tax credits proposal. So I apologize, I got my 3-year-old at home. So as you all are aware, we as the Historical Commission town support historic tax credits. And I've received a second request for a historic tax credit proposal. And as you'll see in the packet, there's a set of processes that historic tax credits go through. And one of them is to get the initial determination from the National Park Service. So this particular piece of property has actually been moved, and that's pretty significant within itself. But nonetheless, it is a contributing structure within the not only National Historic Landmark District, but the local district itself. So this is the entire Form B, which is required through that process. And they are looking for the Historical Commission's support for the tax credit process. So that's what this application is here before you this evening, or this afternoon, this morning. I don't even know what time it is. And if you all are okay with supporting this application, it'll move forward into the next round. I can submit this letter of support to the preservation planner from Epsilon, and they can move forward with their application to MHC.
Thank you, Holly. I just want to give, for the benefit of everyone on the commission, I know there's varying levels of familiarity with tax credits because they haven't been used that often on Nantucket. so the regulating authority here is the Park Service. So tax credits are available. It's an incentive program from, there's two programs. There's a federal program and then there's a state program. So the federal program is unlimited. It doesn't have an annual cap of how much can be given in tax credits. It's very compelling because it allows developers and owners to actually write off, to reduce the total amount of tax they pay by up to 20% of their allowable cost for a qualified rehabilitation of a contributing historic structure. And the state program is generally follows the same guidelines, uses the same criteria. It's the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And that program is, the state gives out $50 million of tax credit every year. The program actually expires in 2022, so we'll need the legislation to renew it and extend that program. But the really, I think, important thing to understand here as far as what we're approving is that to be qualified, the criteria are two. One, well, there's more than two, but the main criteria is that the building has to be on the National Register, or it has to be contributing to a National Register district or National Historic Landmark. So we are both in a district and we are a landmark. This is not an individually significant building, but the question is it contributing to our district and our landmark? And then that would allow it to apply for these tax credits. So the application has two parts, and what has happened is part one. Part one is simply the establishment of eligibility through the registry, the National Registry. And as I said before, the National Registry is maintained by the U.S. Park Service. There are, our permitting authority for preservation in the United States. So I'm just going back to their part one. Okay, so there's tax credit programs that happen all the time on buildings that developers believe are eligible, but they're not actually registered. So the first process is always to establish that the building is eligible for the tax credits, and that's putting together this part one. So this building has received its approval from the Park Service, and it's been signed by Roger Reed, who's a very experienced and credentialed architectural historian at the Park Service. And there's this interesting narrative. So then this building will go on to part two, which it will require them to make a statement of work, to document in greater detail the existing conditions, to document what they're doing inside and outside the building, and to establish what their qualified expenses are so that they can then claim their credit at the state level and at the federal level. So now that we're a certified local government, one of the abilities that or powers that is given is that on a local level, we can nominate structures independently to the Park Service for significance. So in other words, normally this registry is maintained by the State Historical Commission, making recommendations to the Park Service and the Park Service accepting them. Certified local governments can actually make recommendations directly to the Park Service. So it's still the Park Service that maintains the registry, but we have a bigger voice in determining which buildings are contributing. And I just want to talk a little bit because this application really took a lot of study and I thought was quite interesting to discuss. I'm going to just, actually, I'm going to keep sharing so I can show you some things. So this building has been moved. The consultant, Epsilon, who is assisting, prepared this Form B. So this Form B is new. It hasn't been accepted yet by the MHC. Takes, I think, over a year. Actually, they have such a backlog. But this was written, we didn't write this. Holly didn't do this Form B. This Form B was done by Epsilon, which is fine. I mean, consultants do do these reports all the time. We are going to have a consultant do our reports when we get onto our surveys. But I do think it's important to note that this was just done in November 2020. And it, so it says something that, you know, I think is unusual for a structure that is being considered contributing. What we're talking about here is this idea of the structure being contributing to our district, because not every structure is contributing. So it says the buildings at 2 Mayflower Circle retain their integrity to their original construction, were constructed within the period of significance of the National Historic District and contribute to the significance of the district. The house, garage, and cottage are all constructed in a vernacular style consistent with 20th century architectural practices on the island and are associated with Nantucket's residential growth in the 20th century. The properties were moved in 2007 from their original locations. So the house and garage were over in Squam, kind of near Moores and Farm, and the cottage was actually right on a property on Angola Street next to the park where we're going to be installing the Arthur Cooper Monument, between Angola and Candle House Lane. The cottage was from the 1930s. So the properties were moved from their original locations, and it says a common practice on Nantucket from the earliest phases of its European settlement to the present, and a notable example of the island's pervasive historic preservation ethic. The properties retain an orientation, setting, and general environment comparable to the original location and compatible with their significance. The properties retain integrity of design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So I read this and I looked at the buildings, and I certainly noticed that there were some details in the original buildings. So this is what the building looks like now. And I want everybody to notice the chimney. I want you to notice the details around the window and the front of the house. And then, you know, and here on the cottage to notice the door. And then I looked at this, and you can see this building with the shutters, the chimney is taller, the fencing, you know, there was intentional. Thinking about the period of significance of the 1960s, it was all about this revivalist style of this, you know, vernacular. It was a revivalist vernacular style. It was intentional. This cottage, you know, this door with strap hinges and the Dutch door would be a distinctive feature. So, and then I thought, I hope it's okay. I'm just running you guys all through my thought process, and then I will open it up to discussion. And then I thought, if these were significant structures, why were they permitted to be moved? Why, you know, because we have the ability through our historic district to not move structures. And then I saw something very interesting and that was very educational. And that is in the Park Service narrative. It says, while buildings moved within the boundaries of an NHL, National Register NHL district, do not require the same procedures as properties individually listed, NPS, oh no, wait, that's not what I want to read. Sorry, I want to read this paragraph above. The nomination specifies that the buildings constructed outside the period of significance, the POS means period of significance, do not contribute, even if they are architecturally sympathetic, which they likely would be given the regulations under the LHD review for new construction. So what that means is our period of significance on Nantucket is until 1975, which is right here. The justification for ending in 1975 is stated in the nomination. And that's, I'm not going to read all of this, but that is why our period of significance ends in 1975. And that was established when the National Historic Landmark was updated in 2012. So prior to 2012, this period up until 1975, from 1966 to 1975, was not considered, and buildings that were built in that period could not be considered contributing to our district. That changed in 2012. This building was moved in 2007. So at the time that this building was moved, it was not, this was not a period of significance. There's something else that was important to understand why the building was moved. The subject property was originally thought to have been built in 1987, was listed in the 2012 inventory as non-contributing. Subsequent documentation determined that the house and garage were built by 1967. A recent inventory also establishes that the house has good integrity from 1967, apart from a small addition made in 1981. The 1967 garage and the small cottage dating from 1930 that was also moved also retained good integrity from prior to the move. So what we understand now is that the HDC made the decision to allow the move in 2007 of structures that they thought were 1987 structures, and at a time when 1967, let alone 1987, were not considered contributing periods. So oh yes, Holly.
I wanted to let the commission know that this planner from Epsilon Associates did a lot of extensive research. As a matter of fact, her and I were trying to link up coming to the island to actually come into the Plus office to do a lot of this research. Unfortunately, both our schedules wouldn't work. She was able to be in the office when I wasn't, vice versa. But I knew this was something that they were looking into. Didn't know specifically if it was for historic tax credits or what. I didn't know the property had recently or going through a transaction. I just wanted to mention that, you know, this is very significant. This also, I hope, makes everybody understand the difference between the local district and the National Historic Landmark District, and get away from this idea that both are the two little old historic districts, as I refer them to, the town and Sconset, are just the local district. No, the entire island is the local district as well. And it has significance, showing the contributing. And this is really great, as well. I see it from many, many different levels. So I hope you all are just enthusiastic, but it also outlines where, as you were saying, Hillary, that yes, there are going to be situations like this where structures were allowed moved without the HDC realizing the historic integrity. Why? Because not all structures on this island are actually surveyed. So again, it goes back to having updated surveys. But I also would like to point out the importance of the update to our NHL of the period of significance. Yes, it goes up to 1975, but that's not conclusive. That's not everything. And of course, we don't see that ever changing. But this is important and overall for this commission, as well as I think the town's perspective of promoting and advocating for historic tax credits. I think this is a great application. So I just wanted to say my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. And I'm sorry to have gone on so long before opening it to discussion. I just wanted to make sure some of those details were called attention to, that, because ideally moving a structure to preserve it is not a preferred form of preservation. The preferred form of preservation is to keep it on its site, and its site contributes greatly to the integrity, especially when we're talking about these buildings that are not architecturally distinguished. They're important because of when they were built, where they were built, how they were lived in, and what they mean to Nantucket culturally. So our preference would be to avoid appearing to endorse the move. And I think understanding that the move was permitted based on facts that we now understand and interpret differently, I think that's very important to point out. We would hope that if this building came to the HDC today, it would be recognized if it were in its original location, if it were known to be built during a period of significance, which is up until 1975, that the HDC would elect to deny a move of this structure, and that it should, unless there were, every situation is distinctive. However, generally, our preference is to preserve buildings in their site, that they do lose integrity when they're moved. And I think that we can see that with the photos. I'm just going to go back and show the photos again, you know, we know because we're on Nantucket and we know it much better than Roger Reed that, you know, Mayflower Circle right behind the new Nantucket Meat and Fish area is really, really different from being in Rolling Hills next to a pond in one of the, you know, early subdivisions that was later further subdivided. It is very different. But this is the building now. You can see its simple form, 1.5 stories, but before it did have details that, had it been moved with an idea of relocation in a preservation sense, I think these, sorry, oh, I flipped right by it. These details, I mean, it's a very different house. So these would have all been candidates for salvage. So they salvaged the door surround, they salvaged the door, but they didn't salvage the shutters or rebuild them. And just this setting, I mean, a picket fence, these would have been the kind of charming Sconset-like details that an architect building this home in 1967 in this with this preservation ethic would have wanted to, I would think, would have noted as being distinctive. And surely on the cottage, this door with this Dutch door, split door, is distinctively Nantucket from the 1930s. I have a door like this on my 1930s fort on my house. So it's a what we would call a defining characteristic. This was the original site on the pond, so it was sited to have a view of the pond. And then this is what this cottage looks like now with this door. So I just like to open it up to discussion, having pointed those things out. Oh, and also the chimney. So the shutters, the chimney, the picket fence, the door on the cottage. But I'd love to hear what the commission has to say, and I'm also happy to hear from the public. Yes, Angus.
A number of things come to mind as you reviewed the application, and thank you for doing that in the depth that you did. So the biggest thing on my mind is what is the intention of this tax credit? Is it the incentive to keep the integrity of a structure intact in its location? But this seems like we're casting a pretty big net, if anything, because the whole island is a historic district. Does this mean that every house built before 1975 or structure is eligible for tax credit? And also, if this is about preservation, you know, how long does the tax credit last for? Is it like 5 years or 10 years? And after that period, can someone just tear the house down?
So the answer is it's for 5 years. If you change any of the distinctive features, so all of that's going to get defined in part 2, which we don't know yet what their plans are. The intention is that you get the tax credit because you do a rehabilitation that is according to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which is not a strict preservation, right? It's very different from, you know, you have to keep the defining features. And if you change that, or you tear the house down, or you transfer it, it has to be income producing. So this house is going to be used as a rental, I assume. That's the only way for it. It can't be your personal home. Then you have to give the money back. So it's 5 years. But yes, then you know, it would obviously still subject to our local historic district review. But the tax credit does not need to be returned if something happens after 5 years. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. We can't change that.
And the last thing is with the idea of some of the fenestration changing, the modern French doors and the different chimney and the removal of the shutters. it makes me wonder what else happened inside, for the chimney to change. What else happened inside? So.
And I think that in the part 2, they're going to have to get into that, but that would really be between the Park Service. The Park Service and the MHC will determine, will negotiate with the owner about the plan for rehabilitation. So although we would certainly be interested in that, our concern right now is to figure out, given all these details, and we have 2 concerns. We want to promote tax credits. 3 concerns. We want to promote tax credits. We want to promote awareness everywhere that certain buildings from the 1960s and 70s, even if they're outside of Sconset or the town of Nantucket, are contributing. That's important. But we certainly don't want to encourage, this statement that, well, buildings get moved all the time, and they do lose historic integrity if they're moved. It is not a good preservation practice. It's a wonderful salvage practice. So, other comments? Mary.
Hi, thank you, Mary Bergman. I think that even though this building is contributing, it's contributing now. I think there are plenty of contributing buildings that are going before the HDC, and they are being approved for demolition. So I think that question of, so to my mind, when I read this and I see this person has dedicated the time and the expense to go through this process of doing some deep background research on the house, I would like to think that if a future owner were to apply to demolish this house, you'd have a lot of good reason for the HDC to deny that, because they've proved that this is an important structure. So I think that's a positive. And I certainly understand that moving a house is a last resort to demolition and shouldn't be a standard practice, but I think we know that there is a major demolition problem on this island. So I have to imagine that this house was moved. I mean, if this house wasn't moved, it would have been demolished. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And I think that this is really great because it shows that 20th century structures are important to Nantucket's history. And those are some of the most, I'd say they are the most threatened structures on the island right now. So we've seen, houses designed by leading architects who've taught at Yale for 40 years, and the HDC just says it doesn't fit in, it doesn't matter. So I think that this is, there's a lot of positives to this case in particular.
Thank you, Mary. Other comments? Georgia.
Hillary, I generally agree with you, but I think the question of moving in this case could be, your point about moving in its original site could be held to be true about virtually every house that's moved. I mean, first off, because Nantucket is it's just so beautiful physically anywhere. You could take a house that was out in the countryside anywhere and move it someplace else and say, it's just not nearly as pretty there. It's not near, its view isn't as lovely, it isn't situated as well. And granted, this house was looking at Shimmo Pond, and now it's not looking at Shimmo Pond. But I just don't think that that's going to be a salient fact going forward. And considering the issue of preservation of houses of this era, and considering the issue of what is perceived to be the importance of the use of the tax credit, I think those 2 things outweigh the fact of moving. I think practically every building in this island that was moved from one place to another may well have been moved from a very beautiful spot to a less beautiful spot.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Park Service agrees with you, Georgia, because they say, as the entire island is a historic district, the historic location can be broadly interpreted. The original location and the current location are areas not determined to have been historic in terms of previous resources. So they were newly developed. The current location, approved by the local historic district commission, is a residential neighborhood, as was the 1967 subdivision. While the orientation of the house and garage towards the road are not identical to 1967, the change does not significantly alter their historic character and is compatible with the property's significant. And we're not going to change this. I mean, that was a very well-informed determination from a highly educated historian. So, yeah, Georgia, all the more important to preserve the details of the whole island, which is something that we are focused on. Ken, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I just have a question. One of the comments that you made, Hillary, was the fact that the granting of the tax credit requires that the property be income producing. And if we're dealing with the situation where we're dealing with residential homes, in fact, just about the only, depending on the zoning, about the only thing that can become income producing is in fact creating short-term rentals. And obviously short-term rentals is a fairly hot topic right now in the community. And I'm wondering whether or not how that is reflected back with respect to the action of the Historic Commission and the community in terms of creating additional short-term housing when there's a concern with respect to the impact of short-term housing on the life of the community, the availability of properties for year-rounders, and that overall issue. It's just a question. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm just seeing that it could be, sort of the classic example of no good deed shall go unpunished. We find a good solution in terms of being able to help provide some historic preservation. And at the same time, we're accused of in fact, doing something that is against the overall interest of the community or the benefit of people to be able to have affordable housing.
So I guess I can't speak for the commission. Maybe some other people would want to weigh in, but I would think that first of all, it needs to be income producing, but it could be rented year round on a long-term basis. So it doesn't have to be a short-term rental. But also I think our interest is determining just, do we support that it's still a significant structure? Or do we have any comment about, what we would like to see differently in the future, or some comment? I mean, this is our opportunity to support the application or to support it with some qualification. And I don't think the use is really under our purview. Ken, that's my view. Mary has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I had another question, which was you were pointing out some of the features of the house, like the shutters and the doors. Do we know? I mean, I would say based on this, we don't know one way or another if the applicant still retains those pieces and is intending to put them back. Or will this restoration or of the property, will they bring back those defining features?
I think that's a really good question, Mary. And I think that's an opportunity for us in our letter to observe how, while we're happy that the house was salvaged, we're certainly happy that it was salvaged from demolition. We would certainly hope, had this application come in front of the HCC today, it would not have been permitted to be moved, because they have the ability to deny a demolition and deny a move. Given that it was moved, we can identify the distinguishing features that are distinctive, that make it contributing. Whether they're present now or not, I mean, we can identify them from the original photos. Mary, sorry, before I go to Holly, did that answer your question? Or other
I mean,
people
I guess my point is that if the issue, I think we're seeing this project as it's sort of in its, I don't know what stage it's in. Is this the stage? And if the concern is that the shutters aren't on, that's something that could be easily fixed, I would think.
Yeah, we haven't seen the part 2. Holly might know. Holly, do you know?
This is the early stage. So this is whether or not the commission supports this effort. We don't know specifics. We don't know, but we can obviously emphasize the fact of retaining defining features of the original structure. But I also just wanted to mention that I think we want to stay away from emphasizing the fact that if this was provided to the HDC previously, it wouldn't have been, asked to be moved. It was asked to be moved based on incorrect information. I think that is something to notate, not necessarily in the letter, but I think overall, this shows a few things. It shows what historic tax credits can do for income producing properties, hopefully for year-round rental. Obviously, we don't have purview on that, but that this is a good thing. B, it shows a sustainability perspective. So the people who purchase a piece of property now that was built in the 60s who say, I want Nantucket, so I just want to build my own house, so it's for me. But if they realize our historic tax credits can be based on the fact that the entire island is a local district, I think that's imperative. So there's a lot of win-wins that I personally see. And this is in the early phases of it. So there will be another phase that they're going to be required for the historic tax credits process to come back to this commission. We can ask for some more information on that, but this is the initial. This is what they've provided so far. And typically it is to bring back the structure to its original, function and architectural features. Again, the one that I brought up to you all that came to my attention last April when we were all home during COVID for support, which I took a behalf on myself and I provided to you all afterwards, was 33 Milk Street. 33 Milk Street is a very significant structure within our historic district. I remember being in it as a child. That they did a fantastic job. They're not done yet. They from the lay person, it looks like they're done. They've done just a wonderful job. I was actually allowed to visit it. So these are great. These are great things. This is something that I think this commission needs to embrace, and hopefully it will domino and other entities within the town will see what a great underutilized source of tax credits for people, especially when here we are, we're wanting to retain our historic character, and all these different things are coming into play. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I'd love to go around the room. I mean, our objective today is to generate a letter. So we need to get some consensus about if we want to support the determination of significance has already been made, of contribution, I should say, not individual significance, but contribution has already been made by the Park Service, and we will not take that away. So our letter will be additionally informative for the phase 2, and it will also be, I think, a statement to our HTC and our community. So we are looking to have some understanding of if we want to support the tax credit program as applicable to this structure, and do we want to give any indication of, what we would like to see in the part 2 as far as what is distinctive or contributing about the structures when they were in their location, and do we have any, do we want to have any sort of acknowledgement of if we had only known, anything like that. So I'm just going to go around and get comments from anybody just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to comment, and then I'll entertain a motion. Tom, do you have any comments? Oh, we can't hear you, Tom.
I think that renovation, or whatever this is, means making what was old new through replacement, and that is not an appropriate treatment for a historic resource. My only comment.
So you'd like to, right, and it has to meet the requirements of a rehabilitation.
Right.
So if they decide it's a renovation, it won't meet the requirements, and that will be their decision. Susan?
Hillary, I just want to mention.
Yes,
I just
Holly.
want to mention, you've mentioned a couple of times, Tom, they have to follow the Secretary of Interior standards. So they have to provide a plan of action of what they're going to be doing to the structure in order to receive the credits. If it doesn't meet the expertise of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of the structure, they're not going to meet they're not going to get it. So we can't just sit here and assume that it's going to be less par, shall we say. It has to meet their standards.
Well, but what I get from this conversation is a lot of this has already happened.
No, they have no, Tom. So they have to They have to submit a plan for what they're going to do to the structure that is going to be qualifying for these tax credits. And they don't have to do any of this. So they could just like not do anything to the structure. It's their structure. They would just be subject to the HDC rules. So we don't know. Maybe they are planning to return the shutters and the picket fence, and they want to find a way to help fund that. That would be fantastic. So it's really just a comment on supporting that these are contributing structures from this period, and then making any other further comment that might be useful to the Park Service and the MHC as far as the Part 2 application. Susan, did you have comments?
Yeah, I think that that's, unfortunately, when we're looking at the photographs, I think I assumed that was, like completed, that's what they had done. So it's very informative to know that this is part of the process, and that now they have to define a little bit more what the final product is going to look like. So I definitely think my opinion would be to support it and to bring up those specific features that you so nicely inspected and brought forward. The chimney, the fence, especially for me, the Dutch door. I mean, that door on that cottage just makes it look like it was something that was, pulled off the marine lumber back lot and stuck there. So I think this is our opportunity, and I don't think we've been through this process much. So understanding what the process is, I think is very good for us to go through. And so just to make those points, if anybody else has any, all of you, especially the guys that are in the building architecture fields, any more specific ideas of what is defining about the original structure, we should put those into the letter. That's it.
For the benefit of the commission, I just wanted to mention that the historic tax credit is only for the rehabilitation of the main house and the garage, not the cottage.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I know. And the cottage is so sweet.
That is good to know.
The cottage is on another lot, sorry.
Oh,
The cottage is on another lot.
maybe it'll come forward as a separate project then. Yeah, which will be great.
It's been subdivided since then.
Oh. That's amazing to me. Okay, so can everybody see this? This is where it is.
Yep.
So this actually totally needs to be updated now, because it says, this Form B is no longer accurate for the parcel.
Yeah, they can't do that. It takes tax assessor's office a year and a half, 18 months to update the GIS. That's not going to happen now. They could reference the survey, the recorded survey that shows the two parcels, but that's what I'm told from Aaron, from Epsilon, that it was subdivided off.
Well, unfortunately, Holly, I would say we have to respond to this application as it is in front of us. And what's in front of us includes the cottage. It says right here, Part 1, small 1930s cottage. So I think even if it has been subdivided, we have to respond to the application as it is.
And that would be something for them to define later on, but we've already responded. Yeah, I think that's important, Hillary.
Yeah. Mickey, did you have comments?
Yeah, I generally look at this as a positive thing. Looking at the buildings, the way they've been modified with French doors and things on the back, these are all things that the HDC would readily approve, considering its location and general appearance. But as an application to the Park Service, I suspect they'll have sort of a higher standard of a level of what they want to see. So I think that it's probably a good thing because it'll be more of a, when they're done with it, having gone through the application, it'll have more of a historic feel to it than just any other house out in this area having in Daffodil or Mayflower. So I think it's a positive thing for everybody, really. So I'm in favor of it.
Georgia?
No comment. No further
Okay.
comment, Corey.
Okay. David, do you have any comments?
I'll just kind of echo what Mickey says. I think it's generally all positive. And I'd, kind of like to see us kind of follow this closely, since this is kind of the first one that's being presented in front of us. So I'd like to see how phase one transitions into phase two. And kind of, I think that we should include everything that Susan and you and the rest of the commissioners have raised in our letter. So I'm in support.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Angus?
I'm generally supportive as well. And as David says, I think it's going to be interesting to follow this and see where this property ends up. If we can have any sort of weigh in on elements that would make it more deserving of contribution to the setting and to the historic district, if that's useful, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so I think what we're headed towards is a letter of support and acknowledgement of the the distinctive contributing features of the structures in their original setting, which were the extended chimney, the picket fence, the blue shutters on the main house, and the Dutch door on the 1930s cottage. And an acknowledgement of the history being that when this was permitted to be moved, it was thought to be a 1987 structure, and also our period of significance had changed. And I would like to include a statement that although this is an example of salvage and preferable to a demolition, that the best form of preservation is always to preserve a building on its site, a contributing building on its site. I think it's important. And I'll entertain a motion would it be okay if Holly and I work together to write the letter? And because I think they want the letter soon, right, Holly? We don't have time to wait a month and bring the letter back.
No, we do not. I have to give it to them by before April 30th.
Yeah.
April 30th is their deadline. So
yeah,
yes.
I don't think we need to meet. Well, I guess I would ask if we could delegate to the chair, the vice chair, and Holly to approve a final letter that included those items that I just enumerated, unless would anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second
Okay,
the
Angus.
motion.
David, thank you. Okay, a roll call vote. Mickey?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. And okay, terrific. Well, thank you. And I also want to thank Holly for her work supporting this application. And thank you for, well, I'm also just want to acknowledge that I think this is a contribution our commission can make to preservation on Nantucket by bringing up more local knowledge than the Park Service or the MHC would have to these determinations of contribution to structures in our district. Great. Okay, so Esteli has joined us. Hi, Esteli. We can't hear you because you're muted. And we're going to move back to announcements, which include an update on the exhibit on history of preservation. Esteli, thank you.
Oh, would you like me to
Yes.
begin now? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for inviting me. I think the entire team will be pleased that we have been invited to talk to you. The first thing I want to talk about is our work on mission and purpose of the exhibit. And I just want to highlight two things. The first is something that I talked about at the first meeting, and that is winning hearts in addition to winning minds. There is an enormous amount of information, education about preservation, a lot, but there is not a whole lot of work, and I'm not sure how to do it, about winning over people's wanting to preserve their historic structures or the community's historic structures, having a passion and a caring about what happens in Nantucket. And I think if we're going to make any progress, we have to kind of figure out what interferes with the caring. So that is one important issue. The second important issue is there is some talk about the economic value of preservation, but I'm not sure everybody in the community understands the economic value. And so we will begin to stress that in defining our mission and the work on the exhibit. Hillary, shall we questions that go along? Shall I do the whole thing or question as we go along?
Well, I think this is just a quick briefing and an update. So I think you should let everybody know what's happened and then people can ask questions.
Okay, great. We have somebody, as team members, we have somebody from the NPT, the NHA, Sconset Trust, the Nantucket Historic Commission, PIN, the Athenaeum, the Museum of African American History, the Department of Tourism, and Mariah Mitchell. We are now 13 people on the committee. The project plan and the organization structure have been written and presented. The work of the project team has been divided. So there is a steering committee, a research team, an exhibit team, an education team, a fundraising team, and a publicity committee. Each member of the project team chose which one of the groups they wanted to work on. We're in the process of dividing the project into stages. And the purpose of that is to figure out whether we have enough expertise on each of the teams or we need to look to consultants to provide us with more. And we have a list of potential consultants. The University of Florida has agreed to become the project administrator, which is really wonderful for us. This will allow for the collection of charitable gifts to support the effort, as well as an organization that may receive grants, sign contracts, and do insurance business. The date of the exhibit is chosen, and we have all agreed that May 2023 is a more reasonable time to open the exhibit than May 2022. We have begun the exploration of sites. Fundraising plans have begun, and that's as far as we've gotten. Any questions? Tom?
Yes, what was the date, Esteli?
May, Preservation Week, May 2023.
20.
So that's a bit off. And my concern was, are we going to be able to hold people's interest? And everybody assured me, absolutely.
And do you know how long it will go through till exactly?
No, we haven't decided on an end date. And some of that is going to be determined by what site will be, what the site will be for the exhibit.
Okay.
How much time people can give us to exhibit the history of preservation. Any other questions?
So exciting. It's quite the coalition. Nice work, Esteli.
Oh, thank you, Angus. And I agree. It's a wonderful group. I think we're going to need to add people because there is an enormous amount of work.
And representing the Historical Commission in the collaborative are David Silver and me. And One question that we had was, Holly, this is really a question for you. So our part of our objective here is to have this collaborative, to have a project, you know, to produce the exhibit, but also to work together to build connections between the preservation groups on the island and connections between the nonprofits and the municipal groups, ourselves and the HDC. And I guess we don't have anybody from the HCC who has raised their hand to do this, but I'm also not sure if we've really asked them. I think I fall back on this assumption that they're not available. So what would be your reaction to advice you could give Esteli and also the NHC representatives to pull together in the strongest way the municipal function with this effort and the nonprofits?
First, but regarding the HDC, you know, I have not brought it to their attention. Maybe that's something that can be provided to them, you know, via email to the chair and maybe through a public comment before their meeting to see if anybody from the commission would be willing to be involved. I know personally I have not been able to be involved with this, and I apologize, but as you all are probably aware, very, 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 very busy. I think a lot of people are with the town. However, I am very happy to hear the time to 2023. I think that will be very beneficial. There's a lot of different things going on, and that will give a better planning perspective. I really don't have much of an idea on how to get more town involvement with it. Maybe making sure myself and I don't know if Ken wants to chime in or not, but I think it would be very important from the town's perspective to know what the town involvement specifically is going to be outside of this commission and the HDC. So for instance, what are their responsibilities and role in the whole thing? Obviously from the staff's perspective, I can't go out and solicit funds for an event. There's a lot of different ethical things with that, but obviously from a nonprofit's perspective, they can. So I think the role of the town involvement would be very, very important. Overall, I think this is a great thing to show Nantucket where we are in the preservation world, how far we've come, where we are going to be going to, that the efforts that we have done to become a certified local government. I just think that there's a lot of different things. The effort that everybody has put forth, NPT, NHA, MMA, there's a lot of different nonprofits on this island that obviously contribute towards the historic and cultural quality of this island.
So just keep Holly in the loop. And I think making a comment and sending a letter, Esteli, from yourself to the HCC, just so we make sure they're aware, make sure they've been notified, is probably a good idea.
To make a letter to whom?
The HDC.
Okay.
We can send it to Kathy
You and I
Flynn.
can talk about who on
Yeah.
the HDC I should address it to. Okay.
Yeah. And since we have Ken on the line, Ken, I'm not even sure you were aware of this preservation exhibit initiative. Is this the first you're hearing of it, or had it come to your attention?
No, this is the first I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, it's something that we're really excited about. You know, we do think 2 years is going to be necessary to plan it. And it's specifically about the history of the preservation movement on Nantucket and the future of the preservation movement. So hence the collaborative nature, pulling everybody together. And one question that we had was, our idea is to have seed funding to pay for some professionals to help with identifying the themes, the key themes of the exhibit, and creating, you know, some initial documentation and work. But then when we want to scale up the work and production of the exhibit, that we would need a larger source of funding. Is this something that the CPC would entertain a grant application for?
Off the top, I'm not sure. I'd have to take a look at it. I just, stuff in support of preservation is obviously within the scope of the CPC. So to the extent that a study could be framed in terms of creating perhaps a greater awareness of the role of preservation within the community, and do a framework as to the nature of what the funding would be used for, that probably could be something that fit within that area of the CPC's review. So
Okay.
I just
Great.
don't know at the top, but obviously preservation is one of the major areas of funding that we are responsible for looking after.
Okay. So great. So I think a follow-up conversation might be in order about the details.
So. Yep.
Any other questions about the exhibit before we thank Esteli? Seeing none. Esteli, thank you so much. Thank you for all your work on this.
You're welcome.
Oh, Tom, sorry. Oh, Tom, that was a wave, right? That was a wave. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Ken, I will email you and try to set up some time so I can fill you in.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks, Esteli.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Esteli.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
To see you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have some other things under announcements, resiliency guidelines and World Monument Watch. Holly?
Yes, so if you all have not been aware, the Resilient Nantucket Design Guideline draft is available on the town's website for review. We want to be able to provide comments to our consultants by the end of this month. So please take a look at it if you haven't done it already. If you've provided comments, thank you. I appreciate it. This is going to be the town's document. This is not going to be sitting on a shelf. We're going to be utilizing it. And I also just want to mention too that all planning documents, consider them as a living, breathing document. They're always evolving. And then in conjunction with this project, you all know that this was an MVP action grant that we received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And with that, we're required to have a public event, if you will. And Lisa Craig from the Craig Group is putting that effort on. If you have not seen the announcement, the press release that went out, as well as my emails that I've been sending, there is going to be a 3-day event. It's actually next week. It's kicking off on Earth Day. There's going to be subject matter experts from around the world. I think this is going to be fantastic to showcase Nantucket, but also to see what other coastal historical communities in the world are doing to combat climate change, sea level rise, and what do we do for our historic and cultural resources for the planning phases. So this is going to be a great event. Like I said, we would not have been able to do this, I personally think, without Lisa's guidance on this and her connections. There's going to be folks from the UK Trust over in England. There's going to be folks from the Union of Concerned Scientists. So this is going to be a fantastic event. If you have not registered, please do. There's a link right on the town's website, right on the main page. And let me know if you have any questions on that. Also, big shout out to many different non-financial sponsors, I should say, everywhere from our local nonprofits, MPT, NHA, but our and Preservation Institute Nantucket, but also the National Trust for Historic Preservation actually just pushed it out this morning in an email that I received. I was very excited to see that. The National Alliance of Preservation Commissions have also been pushing it out as a sponsor as well. So this is going to have a lot of different involvement, if you will, from both the preservation and planning world. And then the next thing I just want to mention, if you were not at the select board meeting this week, but NPT was before the select board asking for support for the World Monuments Fund. And as staff, I was there in support for this request for the select board to basically give support to this nomination. And this is a global heritage organization that's been around, I think, since the 90s, that pretty much tries to help with the challenges of climate change and cultural tourism And if we did receive the nomination, if they do accept it, there's possibility of receiving some financial funding for certain things. But one of the biggest things is we're going to have subject matter experts that would be beneficial for Nantucket. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. There are a lot of great things, and just a shout out to NPT because I can't stress how importance that the town has that public and private relationship with them. So those are announcements. Thanks.
Thank you, Holly. And thank you for all the work you've been doing on resiliency and preservation of our cultural assets in the face of sea level rise. It's really, it was a huge, I bet you didn't realize how much work it was going to be when you raised your hand for this, but it's been really great. Could you actually send by email the link, just the registration link to everybody? I think while it's top of mind. Thank you. That would be amazing. Okay, so let's talk about our survey grant. Holly has some updates about what she's working on now. The ball is with her at this point.
So as you all are aware, you saw the acceptance letter, and there was a couple of administrative things I had to take care of. I have since done that. They also requested us to give the formal acceptance from the town of Nantucket, and on behalf of the town, I did send that as well. Both Hillary and Ray Pohl, the chair of the HDC, also received a copy, as well as town administration. So right now it's waiting from the State Historic Preservation Office to contact all the basically coordinators for all the CLGs who have obviously received a grant funding to go over a Zoom meeting. Once we have that Zoom meeting, we'll be able to know the specifics of what we moving forward pretty much. It'll be an orientation, if you will. And then we'll be able to generate the RFQ. One of the things that I'm appreciative is our CPO, who is the finance director, Brian Turbot, said he would attend if time is, if his schedule obviously is in line. So that would be a great thing for me as a coordinator for this project. And of course, after that, I will let you all know as we move forward. So that's pretty much the update on that.
Great. And I would also love to attend the orientation meeting just for ongoing training for myself. I think it'd be interesting.
I also did want to let you all know, I just got word, Hillary, special MHC. So our CLG coordinator for the state, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has put in his notice to leave the state.
I know, I heard that. It was really surprising. So this is Chris Skelly, who has come to our meetings. He came to one of our meetings, and he was so helpful as we were trying to figure out what a historical commission does and how to advocate within the town. He was a great guiding hand. Do you know what he's going on to do, Holly?
No, it sounds like he's just going to take it, take it low and do whatever, comes his way. He's been in the preservation planning world for many, many years.
Yeah,
he's
like
also
25 years, I think.
A trainer with the National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners. That's why one of the reasons why he was there at our camp training that we had, but he was really there with his state hat on, but he's a trainer with them. And yeah, I was very sad to hear that because I thanked him for his help and everything that he's done for us to get to this far. So I just wanted to let the commission know that word we just got this week.
It's a loss to the state, to everyone in preservation, but so we'll have to talk to somebody else about training for our CLG work. Okay, thank you, Holly. So we'll look forward to continued updates and progress on getting our grant going, getting our consultant in place. Moving down our agenda, a quick update back on the tax credit topic. David is moving ahead with putting together a course. David, do you want to say just a couple words about that project that you're leading?
Sure. Can you guys hear me all right? Hillary, do you mind pulling up maybe the project plan so I can kind of walk everybody through kind of the steps that we've taken and where we're headed? Or should I just have everyone reference
I'm
it
gonna
in the
have
agenda?
to like find, I don't think I put did I put the project plan in the agenda?
You
I did.
yeah.
Oh, okay, then it's in the
about
packet. I was gonna say,
it's
oh,
about
please don't
halfway
make me
down.
try to find that. Great. Oh, how smart of me to have included that in our packet. Okay.
So I'll briefly kind of just get started as Hillary finds that. So in the last meeting, I think I mentioned to you guys, and we talked about this in prior meetings as well, that I was going to be in contact with NARAB. And Marion
I don't
Conley.
know if everybody knows what NARAB is. It's the Nantucket.
It's essentially the board of realtors for Nantucket. So the Marion Conley with Pepper Fraser, she runs the continuing education courses, and I reached out to her to see if it might be possible to provide some sort of educational forum for realtors as part of their licensing, by their salespersons or brokerage renewal process. I'm actually going through the process now. And I wanted to see if we could incorporate tax credits into that course, because it, as we all know, is a topic that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. And Hillary put together a spreadsheet of different properties that had been, or case studies, if you will, that had utilized the tax credits. Obviously, we're discussing another one at our meeting today on Mayflower Circle. So the hope is obviously in this project to raise awareness, preservation of historic structures, and then obviously, helping people understand, realtors understand how these tax credits work, and then advising their clients on what properties might be eligible versus not eligible. And as we all know, income producing or businesses are the structures that are eligible. So essentially the next step that I'm taking is Hillary and I are going to conference with Marion Conley and kind of determine what this course is going to look like, what our input can look like. And essentially, Marion expressed to me that this course could be put together for the fall. So for any realtors on Nantucket who need to renew by the end of this year, they would be eligible for this course, and NARAB would be offering the course. So that's kind of it's all spelled out here. And we're hoping that, I don't know if I haven't spoken with Mary Bergman outside of just these meetings, but Marion mentioned to me that she wanted Mary's input on this project as well. So Mary, if you're still here and you want to offer any comments, I'd certainly like to entertain it, and we certainly want to collaborate with you. And I'll also take any questions from commissioners or the public for that matter.
Mary, did you want to make any comments? I see you unmuted yourself, so.
Yes, just I'd be interested in talking further, but I really do think that this program is so complicated and convoluted that I think it would be worth thinking about bringing in somebody who this is their expertise.
Oh, definitely. So the idea of the course, I mean, we have to teach ourselves before we can teach anybody else. But the idea of the course is to figure out, first of all, can we offer this for credit through NARAB, and how do you put together a course that is accredited by them, and that we would probably be reaching out to someone like Epsilon to give the meat of the course, but to somehow customize it for Nantucket by including some of the people who have successfully run projects using tax credits, so they can talk about their projects. We can talk as a commission about what types of structures would qualify because they're contributing to our period of significance. But we thought maybe the Nantucket Preservation Trust, I mean, we're going to be developing all of this, but maybe the trust could talk about just the aspiration of living in a historic building, not gutting a historic building. First, people, obviously, if you're going to do this project, you have to embrace the idea that you want the end product, which is a historic home that has integrity. which not everybody even thinks they want right now. So
Right.
we have this, you know, this carrot, which is this you know, you can reduce your cost, but we also, I think, have to build some of the aspiration of living in these homes with these distinctive qualities. And that takes a little bit of romance and education and identification of what's, you know, why is that corner post visible in the room? So maybe that might be a component of the course as well. Georgia.
I think we have to keep remembering that the tax credit is for commercial properties.
Yes.
It's not for residential properties per se. And secondly, I think we really are going to run into this whole sort of dynamite issue right now of short-term rentals. I don't know if you've been following this online, Hillary, but
Yes, I have.
very hot topic on social media
I
at the
have,
moment.
yeah.
Not one about which I have very mixed feelings myself. And I just want to say apropos of that, staying down here in Isle of Palms in the winter, Isle of Palms is a little barrier island off Charleston. Holly knows it well. Isle of Palms has become a hotbed of short-term rentals. The result has been that little houses that were built, we've discussed this, little houses that were built for World War II veterans, affordable houses, have been purchased by off-island investors, made into mega mansions with 6 and 7 bedrooms and many multiple living areas and hot tubs and fire pits and all sorts of stuff, and rented for vast sums of money on a short-term basis. And there's no pushback here. Here, I mean, the thing is a done deal. On Sullivan's Island, immediately to the south of us, there was a short-term rental ban, and it limits owners to renting for a minimum of 30 days. And Sullivan's Island has a very different atmosphere. It's very much more residential, quieter. There's still big houses, but it's a 30-day business. It's a totally different atmosphere. So I think this whole issue of what's going to come up as Article 90 in the town meeting is part and parcel of this, because I can't help but think that the people who move that building to Mayflower have got to be thinking of putting in a pool and advertising it as a short-term rental. And
they're going to move the 1930s cottage to put in a pool.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be hitting that issue. It's got to come up at some point, and we have to be ready for it, either to be hit by it positively or hit by it negatively. There's a lot of just huge information or misinformation about this out on the island.
Yes. Right. David has his hand up.
Yeah, I know that Article 90 is not on our agenda, and I also want to make sure, just read this by you, Madam Chair, that I may need to recuse myself from some of those conversations.
Yeah. Well, we haven't been
and
asked
I'm just
to
curious what kind of the temperature in the room is on that, and if we should put it on the agenda.
You know, well, certainly I want to hear from anybody about what should go on our agenda, but I think that's something for the future if we want to have a discussion about how Article 90 and limitations on short-term rentals might affect our historic character. But what I can say definitively is that this tax credit program is an incentive for people to renovate homes, preserving their integrity inside as well as outside on a volunteer basis by them. And we have no other program except for preservation restrictions, which are more extreme than what a lot of people want to agree to give somebody a financial motivation to preserve the inside of their home at their own choice. So the course that we will offer will be offered to realtors. So we never talk to realtors, except we talk to David because he's here. But you know, we have an opportunity to talk about preservation, about distinctive features, about the attraction of having a distinctive, unique, historic home that is a Nantucket home as opposed to a home that could be anywhere. So I think despite the short-term rental, it's for income producing properties, which can be any kind of rental. And they can also be commercial, businesses. So I'll just leave it at that. Does anybody think giving a course on tax credits is something we should not be doing? I mean, we decided we were going to do it, but is there any hesitation now? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Well, unless there's any other comment, David and I will continue to work on this, developing this course with the hope to launch it in the fall. And we can, you can get in touch with Holly or with me or with Angus about agendas for the meeting. We can think about anything on the agenda. Holly, did you have a question or a comment?
I just wanted to let you all know, I just sent you an email. I sent this to both Hillary and David before, but it's from the state on the tax credit program. So you all can just take a look at it. It's very, you know, easy reading, kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of it.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, David, and thank you so much for working on this. The next thing on our agenda is are some reviews. It says section 106 reviews, but some of these are actually section 52254. I'm always reversing these numbers, the state equivalent of section 106 reviews. So sewer main number 3 and then Sparks Avenue. We did receive a letter from Mary Lynn Rainey. It was sent to Holly, and Holly kindly shared it with us. Just letting everybody know, first of all, some clarification. The Complete Streets funding, which triggers this state review, is only for Sparks Avenue. It's not including Williams and Pleasant. We made comments to the MHC, which we accepted and sent in a letter to the MHC to John Patton about the entire project area that was submitted to us on the plan. But, and we do hope that our comments are accepted. You know, we hope that there's going to be a public meeting and opportunity to consider historic character and actual historic structures and features for this broader area. But I think Holly inquired, and as far as we know, we haven't been told anything differently. In fact, we have been told that the Complete Streets funding is going only to the Sparks Avenue corridor. So the other update, as said in the letter, is that Richard Grubb and Associates is doing an archaeological reconnaissance survey. And I went ahead and reached out to Mary Lynn Rainey. I had a long conversation with her yesterday, and I can clarify that our concerns about that corridor, I hesitate to even call them concerns. It's really just advice that we offered about what we would like to see, that is really about aesthetics of, you know, maintaining the rural quality and really kind of putting our best face forward on Nantucket, no matter what the location is, for reasons we discussed earlier when we talked about the tax credit at 2 Mayflower, is just concerned some of the detailing about maintaining some grass division between the asphalt multi-use path and the road. And if there is a grass division, treating the curb a little differently. I think those were the extent of our comments. We offered them to the MHC. We would love to have the opportunity to offer them to the town, DPW, if we could have a public meeting or have a meeting with them, that's what we would offer. But Mary Lynn Rainey confirmed to me that that's really not under her purview. Richard Grubb has been retained for the archaeology that will go forward. So we can comment, but I just wanted to brief everybody on that. And I guess I don't know what the next step is, but through Holly, can we have some dialogue about this project so that we can, you know, get some feedback on our concern or somehow be part of the process about the detailing of this project as it's developed?
Yeah, this is the last thing I've been notified on from Mary Lynn. So yeah, whatever I receive, whatever I hear, I will let the commission know.
Thank you, Holly. Ken, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question. I saw on the agenda that an application had been made for the Historic Commission to be the monitoring agent with respect to this project. And I was trying to understand, I don't know if this is the right area to raise, but I was trying to understand what was involved in being the monitoring agent and what part of the project did that relate to, and just to create an understanding of what a monitoring agent is.
I've never heard the term monitoring agent before. We requested to be a consulting party because, but I don't know, where did you see that, Ken? I don't know what that refers to.
I'm not exactly sure, but it was in some of the documentation that I looked at with respect to this agenda. So, and
Okay, well, we can look at the packet together. Do you know, Holly, what this is coming from? So was it this, Ken?
yeah, it might be that because there was a letter. It indicated that you had requested something from to the Massachusetts Historical Commission to be, and I read it as monitoring agent. I may have misread it.
No.
So.
Consulting party. So local historical commissions have the right to be consulting parties at their request, which means that we just get notified and that we can express our concerns or comments or requests. And the obligation is that the project manager, the agency that's doing the work will make, there's a term of art, I believe it's feasible. They will be aware that the project is in a historic district. They will take it into account, and that if feasible, and I think it might also be prudent, they will avoid or mitigate adverse effects. There's actually language about this. But as far as monitoring agent, Ken, I'm sorry, I think I have to say that unless you can point at it, I haven't heard that term and I haven't used it, and we as a commission haven't used it.
It may be my misunderstanding, but I was just interested to find out from the town's point of view and sort of what the role of the commission was going to be, and what concerns that there needed to be on behalf of the town or the DPW with respect to the implementation of the new sewer line that's going forward. And if the state's concern and is only with respect to Sparks Avenue, that's of interest to me. But my concern was I wanted to make sure that if there were issues that were of concern to the Historic Commission that related to the tearing up of the streets from the CC station all the way out to the new plant through town, through Pine Street, through all of those streets, what those issues might be, so that there is a problem with respect to the DPW in terms of what it's doing. And I want to try and anticipate or avoid an issue as opposed to trying to fix it if it happens.
Okay, Ken, thank you so much for clarifying that. So let's finish up with the discussion about the Sparks Avenue, and then we can move to the sewer force main 3. So as far as Sparks Avenue is concerned, we've clarified that the Complete Streets funding is we've been notified that it's only for Sparks Avenue. We have put in a letter which covered all 3 streets, but hopefully the MHC will consider our comments on Sparks Avenue. We've requested to be a consulting party to the project and stay informed. And I do hope that we will have an opportunity, Holly, to request some meeting with the DPW and the Beta. Are they intending to have public meetings about this process? Because it is in the project plan that they have public meetings.
I'm not familiar with, I think the C Street, even though the C Street pump station project is a sewer project.
Sorry, I'm talking about about Sparks Avenue. Okay, good.
Understand.
Yeah.
My point is that DPW is also working on that one with them. That one's, I think, from a town's perspective, the #1 project. I think my understanding is that the Complete Streets project, yes, it's in a planning phase, but it's farther down the road than and less imminent than the sewer project, because the sewer project obviously is more imperative from the catastrophic failure that we had. So I have not, my point is, I have not heard any more details on any public meetings and all that, but again, it's a DPW project, and I would assume that we would be notified of when that takes
Okay.
place. If I
All
hear
right.
anything directly from the DPW, I will let this commission know.
Okay, thank you so much, Holly. So, so there's nothing more to do there with Sparks Avenue. And as far as the sewer force main 3, so I included a letter in the packet. This came up, you know, this has come up in between our last meeting and this meeting. Let me see if I can find, what is this? How did this, oh no, I know what this is. This is about the protocols. Okay, so this is the letter that we sent on April 2nd. And all of this came out since obviously since our last meeting. There were plans. We requested to be a consulting party on this project because historic and archaeological resources in the sidewalk must be identified and protected as allowed under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act and other applicable laws, and preserved as possible. Okay. So where to answer Ken's question and to just update everybody about the work, the plans are at the 60% stage. The plans relate to both installing the sewer force main in the middle of the road, but also reconstructing sidewalks that are really being reconstructed because the machinery is all there and the sidewalks are uneven. I guess in some cases they might need to cut a corner, and so they need to reconstruct that. But for the most part, my understanding is that the sidewalk work is in addition to the sewer force main for a separate purpose for the benefit of the public. I'm just trying to find the letter for Frank Ayotte. Okay, so the Massachusetts Historical Commission reviewed this project. They did not consult with the local historical commission. They received the notification about the project. They looked at their files about archaeological resources and historic resources, and they provisionally concluded no adverse effect on the historic district, as long as a condition was met, which was that there would be a post-discovery protocol developed. So this is a letter from March 29th, so very recent. Hazen and Sawyer is the project manager. And in responding to the MHC, Hazen and Sawyer has hired public archaeology laboratory to develop the protocol. And we were copied on this letter, which as you can see, was because we requested and they complied to copy us. So our letter is asking that the post-discovery protocol also consider historic streetscape details. Okay, so we requested consulting status and we identified that we would like these archaeological resources in the sidewalks and historic resources in the sidewalk identified and protected as allowed under the law. So the sewer department has been very responsive, very cooperative, and they've requested that we have a meeting after the 75% plans are completed, and that will happen in May. And Holly is on point with that. And the 75%, the concern with the 60% plan is that they included specifications for reconstructing sidewalks that we know from looking at them would require abandonment of historic curbing because they had specification for 18-inch deep curbs. And so our concern is that the historic material, and Ken, I'm answering your question here now. Our concern is that the historic material, which is everywhere in the sidewalks along this path from C Street through the town out Pine Street, be identified, and that provision be made so that sidewalk work as needed can be completed, and there not be an adverse effect to the historic material in the sidewalk, which we know from experience and common sense is something that has to be planned for upfront if it's actually going to happen in the end. So that is what our conversation with Hazen and Sawyer and the sewer department and the DPW will focus on, I believe, when we actually have the conversation, when the 75% plans are completed. Holly, did I capture everything? Anything to add there?
You got it down, Pat. You know, the 75% plans are going to be that detail of exactly where those outside of the limits, so to speak, where the sidewalks would come into play. If you all have not yet had, if the opportunity has arisen, if you're not on island or if you're not downtown, I would just take a look at the route and take a look at the sidewalks. I think that would be beneficial. I know that, you know, they're willing to do that with us, but if you could do it on your own time, I would encourage it. I recently did. And it's really eye-opening to see what we have for existing curbs where certain areas have actually been fixed from a accessibility perspective, where there's no curbing at all, where they have that like metal strip, maybe from the 40s and 50s, maybe even later, I don't know, but nothing at all. So there's some areas that obviously from an accessibility standpoint need to be fixed, but obviously there's features that we want to retain. So just take a look out there and get an idea. And of course, then that's going to be helpful once we do get these plans in those specific areas. We can look at those case by case spots. They're really willing to work with us. They understand. And if you all don't know David Gray as the sewer director, he's a Nantucketer. He respects Nantucket and our historic quality too.
Ken, did that answer your question, or do you have other comments?
No, I first of all, I want to apologize because I translated consulting party into monitoring party. Okay.
We'd love to be the monitoring party, but we're not. Yeah.
But what's really important is that if Holly could do a memo to me outlining what we just talked about, I can then circulate that, because I know that I've talked to Rob and I've talked to David, and both understand the importance of, in fact, preserving and putting back the stuff that's historical there in terms of the area. So having a memo in terms of that, this is the plan in terms of how the NHC is going to be working with DPW and the sewer department would be really very helpful to, again, show that there's going to be cooperation between the entities in terms of looking out for the historical preservation in a very constructive way. And the planning is done in advance as opposed to the perception of something coming in after the fact. So that would be really very helpful from my point of view.
Okay. Holly's giving a thumbs up, and I see Tom has his hand up.
Okay. And again, my apologize for translating that term.
It's okay, no worries.
My concern or comment about this whole process going through town and some of the most historic parts of the town is one of the things is the height of the curbstones. I too have walked through there recently with my tape measure, and I've been doing that around North Liberty Street as well. And many of the curbs there are 4 inches tall, 4.5 inches tall. There is nothing there that's, well, there are, but very few places that are 6 or 8 inches high, like there are in many of the places in the town. And I think in order to historically preserve what is there now, and hopefully what will be there again when they're through, I don't know who measures those heights or stuff like that, but I think it's important in order to get the visual impact of what will be there when we're done, they need to make sure that what goes there in the finish product is what was there before the fact.
I
I've got-
agree,
I've
Tom.
gotta go. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'll see you later.
Bye, Tom. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to illustrate for everybody and for Ken the concern that I think Tom is bringing up. So this is from our booklet on preservation and maintenance of historic pavement. So this is a site, when Judith Chase Lane was reconstructed, they wrapped the work around Fair Street. Judith Chase Lane has curbs from, we think, like the 1930s. They're granite, split face granite curbs that were all reused, supplemented with new material. Fair Street has these old 1830s schist curbs, which are really distinctive, the oldest curbs we have, and hand hewn. And when they dug them up, you'll notice that they put them practically flush with the street. So they reuse them. I guess that's good. They're buried in concrete, but they put them flush to the street. And our it's a belief, because it wasn't confirmed, but when these drawings are made, if they don't understand the dimension of the material that they're working with, the engineer is designing it with a certain amount underground for integrity of, for strength. And these were basically buried. And I think it was a call that the contractor had to make in the field. So what we're hoping to do is have a proper survey so that the engineers can design something that's buildable when the contractor gets out into the field. So I'm really happy. I'm really hoping that this will be a model project of cooperation and advanced planning, understanding the details, and compromise as well. I mean, we might find, you know what, the pitch of this sidewalk, if we want to make it an accessible sidewalk, it needs to, we might need to raise the sidewalk, and the curb won't be deep enough. But then maybe we can reuse that curb in another place where the ground is flat enough to have the curb be like, those are the kinds of conversations I think we can have if we're collaborative and transparent and well-informed. So that's our plan for the Sewer Force Main 3, to work with Holly, to liaise with her colleagues in the town, to have a meeting in May to go over the 75% plan and have it be the best plan for preservation, accessibility, and utility to the town. Any questions or other comments about this? And I guess Holly's going to put together a memo, which, Holly, I'd appreciate if you could work with the chair and vice chair on. Okay, and Ken is nodding. We can't hear you, Ken, but okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. We do have another sidewalk topic, and I did get some news from Dawn about that. Just quickly, the proposal for WPI students. I haven't written it yet. It's due in May. I will write it. And I need to find out if it's due before our next meeting. If it is, what this is going to be is a proposal that I'm going to work with Holly, Lauren, and Graham. Graham from the DPW, where we want to sponsor, the town wants to sponsor or wants to request a WPI project to look at reuse and sustainability, and work with Housing Nantucket as well. So we have to write this draft, and we already approved that we should do this. So I don't think there's a decision point. I'm just letting everybody know that we might need to put this in before you guys have a chance to see it. And I'd hope to have it to you, but I've just been doing too much. I didn't get it done, so. Is that all right with everybody? Any comments about that? I'm seeing nodding heads and tired people. I'm sorry, I know we're over time. So the last thing is on our main agenda, there's some other business announcements I need to make, but sidewalks and requests for a policy. Holly, do you have some news for us about that?
Yes, so the town is in the process of creating a policy. I will be notified and you all will be consulted through that policy work. So I will just hold tight. It's in the works. As you all are aware, you know, the pandemic and everything else has not been helping with a lot of different things, but it's in the works. So I will bring that to you once I receive it.
And I'm really, really pleased that that the town has invited their preservation planner to have a role in drafting this policy. And you know, you, Holly, as our staff liaison, you know everything that we care about. It's all in our booklet. You understand it. You've been trained on it. The Stantec response to our preservation engineering document was circulated to everybody. So now, Holly, now that you're going to be the point person, maybe Angus and maybe a group of us who've sort of been really close to that Stantec response and that preservation engineering report should have a call with you. Because I'd like to just point out a couple of things about that response, but I don't think it makes sense to do it in this meeting right now. Is that okay, Holly?
As long as it's not next week, because next week is difficult for me.
No, I
School
personally
vacation, I'm
have,
working.
yeah, I have kids vacation and I have 4 term papers to deliver before the end of the month. So I'm kind of freaking out as well. Okay, so moving right along, joint meeting with the HDC. When are we going to do that?
I'm going to request some dates from the chair of the HDC. As you all are aware, they can't even get through their agenda every week. And then there's sometimes, because the way that our Zoom meetings go and the regulatory board's schedules, they didn't even have a regular meeting this week. We had a Thursday meeting for an hour and a half. That doesn't cut it. So that's just the way that the scheduling works. I'm looking forward for the fall, like August, September-ish is where I'm gonna ask what would work for their schedule. All the regulatory boards pretty much have schedules set with Zoom. And I think we're gonna be meeting like for this for a while now. I haven't heard any changes. So I will find out and report back.
Thank you, Holly. Mass DOT Cultural Resources Unit research study. So this is interesting. The DOT employs 6 people in cultural resources. They're the people that work with the field engineers on protecting historic bridges, you know, anything that's public roadway. They actually have a team of trained folks that look out for cultural resources. So the head of that group came to my preservation planning class, and I followed up with him afterwards about maybe doing a research study potentially, or working with their cultural resources unit as a source for specification for the cobblestones. Because this is an area where, you know, the town is getting advice from Stantec that is to use a specification that's really for a gravel road or a paver road. And so the question is, the DOT is here to advise towns about pavement, and they will do research if they don't have the information they need. So they've been a useful liaison that I've recently discovered, and Holly, I would encourage you to be aware of as well. Whenever, you know, whenever we have roadway projects, we can speak to our counterpart at the DOT, which is their cultural resources team. So I'm just briefing everybody that I've had a conversation, and they're on our behalf from a preservation perspective, making inquiries about specifications for historic pavement. and they will liaise with our town DPW and other folks sort of on the non-preservation typical side. And hopefully that can be another point of productive collaboration. So that's by way of announcements. I have another important announcement. So I'm expecting that Don Demichelle will not renew. We have 4 commissioners expiring, their seats expiring. Mickey, Angus, Tom, and Don. Don's an alternate. And Mickey, Angus, and Tom have all said they will renew, but Don is not going to renew. So I would really like everybody to work on getting the word out. I've especially tried to notify people of color, you know, working builders, like just think about how to diversify and broaden the perspectives that we have on this commission. I've not had a lot of luck. I haven't been able to surface anyone from the Black or people of color community or a builder. Everyone's really busy, but let's all put our heads together, get the word out that we will have an opening, and it would be great, you know, to get some applicants. If anybody has some thoughts. I haven't written the Q1 update to the select board, but that's on the to-do list. And training we will not have until there's a new trainer. So that's kind of it for the agenda. Georgia? You're muted, Georgia.
What's the time frame for renewal? We're looking for somebody to join the commission.
It hasn't been announced yet, but I think last year it was due like May 15th or May 23rd or something. It's soon. So
end of May. It's the end of May.
Yeah. Holly, do you know?
Yes, there's actually information I just recently received that I noticed the time frame. I have it as a PDF and I can send it to you all. It actually breaks down all the different commissions and who, what time and when they would be before the select board as the public process that they do. And it was updated. So I'll send that to everybody.
Thank you, Holly. Okay, any other comments or discussion before we adjourn? Nope. Okay.
Excellent meeting, Hillary, as usual.
Oh, thank you, Georgia. It's great to see everybody. We're meeting again on May 21st. Ken, thank you for joining us for our whole meeting.
You guys cover a lot of stuff, and there were a number of topics on the agenda tonight that were of real interest to me from the point of view of how it can all fit in with respect to what the town's doing and seeing how we can work together. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was really, really great to have you here. I hope you come again.
I will, as my schedule permits and based on topics on your agenda, you can plan on that.
Thank you, Ken. Great. Well, terrific, everyone. Well, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Angus, thank you. Georgia is seconding, and we'll just declare adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Be well.
Thank you, Hillary.
Take care. Bye-bye.